All righty, welcome to NLI, Intactivist World Domination Meeting, number whatever it is, who knows, but welcome. Thank you guys for joining us. I really appreciate you guys. The consistency is amazing. We've been really consistent. I mean, we've been doing this for over a month and a half now or so, and everybody's been showing up, so it's been really good. All right, so NLI Meetup number whatever. We're going to go over a little quick what we do. We are an organized group of dedicated, educated, activated Intactivists. I love saying that for some reason. We work to enhance each of our own potential, utilizing the skills and talents of our volunteers. We give volunteers opportunities. We organize, we plan, and we carry out educational outreach for high-value targets. So we create our own Intactivism. So announcements. For editors or for volunteers that I'm going to need right now, any editors, writers, or Tele-Intactivists, we are still looking for you. We'll probably always be looking for you. So anybody that's, I'm still looking for somebody to help with the print. I want to create a print system or a print committee that the person is involved with helping us to make sure we have printed materials in the hands of Intactivists. I want to have a whole printing system set up so that we have a list of people that are Intactivists who are interested in handing out information, flyers, different things like that. We need help with Missouri database gathering. So I want to get somebody started that's not already on a database to help me with the Missouri database, because we need to get ready for next year with the Cockfight organization is going to be running campaigns to the various colleges and universities and their sporting in particular. I think right now he's focused on football, but he will be doing that by next year. So we really want to have all of the places that Cockfight's going to be traveling to get our media outreach database up to par with all the places that he's going to be visiting next year. So we'll find that out. But anybody that can help me with gathering the Missouri database, that would be great. Need that help. FGM campaign email number 3 is posted. I know this is a little bit slower, and I wanted to have this stuff out, and I'm sorry. This has not been the week for me when it comes to Intactivism, so I will get more done this coming week. But let me just show you what we got right now. This is the update. I was literally just working on this. So this is the update on the 3rd email. The 3rd email is posted. Sorry it took me so long to get it here, but this is it. The epidemic of female genital mutilation is already here. Comma, America, 3rd of a 6-part series. I like that title. If you guys have a better one, let me know. I went over this last time, so I'm not going to go into this now, but I want you to go on here, and any of these 3 or emails that are already up here, or any of these that I have, read through these. If there's some editing, let me know, or you have some recommendations, something I could add to it, a way of saying things that might be more effective or more forceful. Like, I'm always open to recommendations. Anyways, you can see I kind of put the images in here. It's a really awesome thing here, and then right at the very end we got a thing about a female in America, an American victim of FGM. Okay, so right then and there, all that stuff's ready to go. The next one with the FGM campaign is going to be the social reasons why cutting occurs in FGM societies, and during the next email is where I'm really going to start connecting the two. Okay, I'm going to start explaining how the types of things that we hear are also the types of things that they think. Okay, so when we're a part of a genitally mutilating culture, right? So when we hear all the ridiculousness about MGM, or how just the ridiculous things that we hear, the same things are being said in those societies about FGM. And so I want to, in that email, kind of bring that to the forefront. That, well, number one, the reason why FGM is occurring isn't just because of men trying to dominate their women and harm their little girls, or force them into some kind of thing. It's really like they believe, just like we do, they believe it's better for their child. They have reasons for it that are cultural reasons as well. So we're going to explore those in the next one. That's going to be a little bit harder, and I might take longer than a week to do this one. So just get a heads up that this is a one I think that's going to be a very important one. I should have it done by next week. That's my goal. Anyways, so that's up and done. So today's goals, we're going to do a Tele-Intactivism phone script from Paul, and he's going to explain some things to us about his system, and I'm going to try to let him take over screen, and he's going to show you a PowerPoint presentation that he's got.
Daniel, I'm on the road, so just let me every once in a while jump in. I was just going to say with the FGM campaign,
Yes,
we should be very upfront with like the complete bullshit they say too, like the religious reasons why they do it that people know is bullshit, and then all the superstitious shit too. So it's not like we just say they're doing it for the same reasons. We got to be like more specific, kind of. I think just give a little more kind of specific, like, you know, people who do the same shit, like those people in Malaysia, in Indonesia, do it for the same stupid fucking reasons.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You know, you go to Africa, they think the clitoris. Yeah, it's me.
Okay,
they think in Africa, if the clitoris touches the head, the baby will die. So people know that those reasons are bullshit, but we should, you know, concentrate, I think, on like the medicalized areas of FGM.
I mean, the things that we hear, what I'm trying to do with this email, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you, and we will, and I'm going to actually go with you. I'm going to write this email with you. Like, I want to pick your brain a little bit more on this, on writing this one than I have on the previous ones. But what I really want to do with this one is I want them to understand the similarities that these cultures have with us, that we are the exact same thing. That when they, for instance, when they go and they say that FGM and MGM are different, what they're doing is they're doing the same thing. They are just as wrong as the FGM advocates. They're just as sick. I want to connect those two.
I totally get it, and I totally agree. That's a great idea. But they're going to counter right away with, you know, the absolute batshit crazy fucking people who say, you know, the clitoris will grow down to the ground and all this other crazy shit. So, I mean, we should be like, yes, that does exist too, but there are places in the world like Indonesia, Malaysia, where pediatricians will circumcise your daughter's foreskin for the same reasons that we do it here. So what is your response to that? Is that okay over there?
That's why I think this next one is one of the most powerful emails we're going to have. Okay, for our position, right? We kind of played the groundwork. The first one was about the FGM happening in America, and the sad fact that we don't really literally have a national law or a federal law against FGM, and about this doctor getting away with genital mutilation in America. And then the feminists aren't saying nothing. The next one was about the harms of it, how bad this is. This isn't just about sexual pleasure. This is about mental balance, mental and emotional stability of the person, their biological development of their brain. This is literally creating brain damage. That was number 2. Number 3 was the one we just did. Hold on a second. I'm just going to pull it up again.
You should throw in there, when you're talking about the mental damage, how the original people who perpetrated it in this country had that as their intention. You know, do it without anesthesia, so the, you know, acute pain they'll remember it always. You know.
Oh yeah,
so their goal was to actually to do that. So I mean, that's a good thing to kind of throw in there.
Well, that'll be definitely coming up in the future. We have to limit how much stuff we put in these, but yeah, this one right here.
No, I agree. The science behind it definitely having an acute, and I would tie into that. You know, we know for a fact that when you mess with people's genitals, like the intersex community, the suicide rate goes way up.
Yeah,
and so a person's perception, if they're mutilated or not, is what matters. And your son will develop a perception in this country in the future that he is mutilated because of us.
I totally agree. We'll do that, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, the next thing is, okay, so we'll go over, I'm just going to kind of describe what the rest of the stuff is, and then we'll have Paul take over and do the Tele-Intactivism phone script. Okay, so we're going to do an outline for the educational video series. We're going to finalize the anatomy, structure, and function campaign. I just want to go over those briefly with you guys and just really solid, so that I want to make solid plans with all of you that this is what we're doing, this is what we're up for, this is what we signed up for, right? Okay, so outline for educational video series. I want to make sure that everybody, you know, has a contribution to that. These are the educational video series for Intactivists. So I want to have that kind of written out because we need to start making those, and that will be starting after this campaign is over with. So as soon as we finish the FGM campaign, like it's all done, it's all written, then we're going to start in on the anatomy and physiology, And while we're doing that, we're going to be creating the Intactivist educational outreach, the Intactivist educational outreach program. Okay, that's going to be hosted online on our website. So when we create that, what we're going to do is, the way I'm going to run that is, we're going to have the first part of our meeting. We'll have, kind of the introduction and everything, what we're doing right now. Then from that point on, we're going to go everybody silent, and I'm going to do a video. I'm recording it. We're going to go through PowerPoint presentation, whatever. I haven't decided that yet. I'm going to work with Paul on that maybe. Well, but we'll go through that, and then after that is done with, when we're done with the recording, I'm going to stop it, and then we'll talk about it. And we'll take that recording and we'll decide whether or not it's right for us and we want to make it better or adjust it or whatever. Nothing's set in stone, so we'll always be able to edit things and adjust them. So anyways, that's the kind of plan, what I'm thinking right now. Of course, that's up to you guys. Okay, finally, anatomy, structure, and function, and then continuing countering cutter excuses. So if we don't run out of time today.
Okay, so what I did was, and the last time I was on with you guys, we were talking about how to talk to people, specifically, especially if it was you encountered negative results or whatever. And one of the things I said right out of the chute is, we need to be having conversations with people using open-ended questions. And that's very important. And so what I did was, I basically went and stole a lot of information from a website, and I put it in the form of a little presentation for you guys. This is a rough draft form, and obviously we can make it better, and we can make it a lot more specific to us. I tried to do some edits that way to kind of get the idea across of, when you're talking to somebody, how to do it in a non-confrontational way, and also a way in which you're engaging them and you're not just shouting at them facts or throwing up information onto them, and you never know whether they're with you or what's going on. So does that make sense to everybody?
Absolutely. I think that the facts have a certain point in time when they're useful, but then you got to really make sure that, like Paul's saying, is that the person listening to you is on board, and you have to gauge where they're at.
Yeah, and my explanation of it is, it's kind of like a sales call. You go in and you've got to figure out, is the guy buying or is the lady buying? If they're not buying, you're wasting your time, number one. Number two, if you tell them what you're going to do for them straight up front without really getting their buy-in, you've just lost your sales pitch and they'll never do anything with you. So you kind of got to get them to buy into the idea that they want your help or our help as an organization. And so that's kind of the thought process behind this. So with that in mind, if you see the first slide I said was open-ended sales questions, and we can change the word from sales, guys, if that makes you feel a little queasy or uncomfortable. In the remarkable importance of asking the right questions is basically what we're talking about. Open-ended questions are great for salespeople to ask someone, because if you ask a closed-ended question, that's a question that's either answered with yes or no, you don't really get the why from them. And what we're trying to understand is why they're thinking the way they are, and here's the other thing. When you ask for someone's opinion about something, you might get a completely different answer than what you think. And if you tell them up front what your opinion is, they're more likely to give you that back as their opinion, even though it may not be. So we want to try to avoid some of the pitfalls that we have, and we want to really have a dialogue with them about what they think, what they're feeling, how things have impacted them on a personal level. And if you can get to that level of a conversation with someone, you'll get a lot better response from them.
And the thing is to think about is that we've already run a campaign by the time we're talking to these people anyways. We've already had 5 or 6 emails going out to these people. And so they're going to have a little bit of at least understanding. And then if we get to them and we say, hey, have you read the emails? That's one of the questions I like to ask is, have you read the emails? Because a lot of them, they'll go to spam, and you can say, hey, do you mind checking out your spam folder? Here's the name where the email came from, and then they can find it. And do you mind reading our emails and taking off your spam filter? And then, you got an opportunity to communicate with them the following emails.
So the idea in a nutshell is, and I put it on here, is the right open-ended questions will ensure that we're getting rapport built with these people, and we can establish what their needs are, and we can clearly articulate what our value is to them in this scenario. The hopes that they'll buy into that and ask for us to help them. Because as soon as someone asks for your help, you've got them. That's when you can start talking about the facts and what we can do and stuff like that. So if that makes sense to everybody.
Absolutely.
Now I will tell you too, it's unusual and uncomfortable sometimes to ask a question and just shut up and let them answer. So we may need to practice this with each other, which is something we could talk about. If anybody would like to do that, we could maybe set up a separate session.
Well, we're gonna do script together on this meetup. Is what I'd like to do, is actually practice. I'm gonna make a phone call. I'm gonna call somebody. What's the first thing I say? What's the second thing I say? How do I respond to this? How to respond to that? Just practice together so that you've already got that practice. Because when I did sales scripts and I practiced them with other people, it was a completely different thing than just kind of reading it or trying to read through it. Yeah.
So this can maybe be the outline for that. And so what I'll do, Daniel, is I'll make sure you get this emailed over to you. You can put it up, make some edits to it, do whatever you want to. I didn't put any pictures or anything like that in it. This is all just instructional.
Yeah, that's fine. We're not worried about that.
Okay. So the idea is, first of all, what is an open-ended question? And what we say is that open-ended questions are designed to begin a conversation with somebody. And that's really what we're shooting for. We're not trying to be a used car salesperson and sell them on something. We want to talk to them about what they need, and then we will kind of steer them to what our solutions are, if that makes sense to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, what was the first thing you ever heard about the foreskin or something like that? So they'll realize right away it's all been negative, indoctrination. If you ask them, what's the first thing you can recall somebody saying?
So what are the characteristics of an open-ended question? They involve the 5 W's, of which there's actually 6. Is who, what, when, where, how, why, and why. So how doesn't start with a W, right? That's part of it. So what you don't really have a set pattern for the way you ask these questions. That's not that important. What really is important is and I talk about this at the end, but we'll talk about it a little bit now, is that you need to develop your own questions that are in your voice that you're comfortable with asking. The main thing that I want to help guide you towards is to not ask a closed-ended question. You want it to be wide open for them to elaborate on, because if you narrow it to just a yes or no answer, you don't really know very much, and then you've got to ask another question. It's better to let them do the talking and you just sit back and listen until you've got that rapport going. So you guys can look at that, but the idea is that we want to get these feelings to be very personal. So they're designed to do a dialogue. We already talked about that. So again, this is stuff that you guys can read about. So what's the difference between an open-ended or closed-ended? Open-ended, most of them are going to say what, how, why, that kind of thing. These are the ones you got to not use. You got to get out of your mind, which is or are you, or do you, or would you, or could you, who, what, I think, Daniel, you said originally, have you read our emails? Is that an open-ended or closed-ended question?
Closed.
It's closed. What would be a better way to ask that?
Do you think you could find time? Do you think in the next week or two you might be able to find time to read a short email?
Okay, that's a do question, so the answer is no.
No, I'd say what were the first 2 things you thought of when you read my email?
There you go. Now you're on to it. So what would be another way you could ask it? Yeah. What's another question you could ask them that would be open-ended? So you'll get a response. What did you think about our emails? What did you think about our emails? I think last week I said something like, what was the thing that stuck out most and had the biggest impact on you? You see what I'm saying? Make it about them, and you're trying to draw them out and let them be comfortable talking with you. So does that make sense?
That's very
Yeah.
smart. Yes.
Explain the information in the emails to other people that you know.
Right.
Good ask that.
Yeah. How would you use this information? Yeah.
That's a good one.
Hey guys,
How
just so you know, real quick, let me just say something. Whatever you guys say right now, I'm going to be going through this when I edit these videos. I'm going to be writing this stuff down. I'm not worried about writing it down right now, but I'm going to be writing these down so that this is going to be part of our script. So whatever you're doing right now, give out your thoughts, and then we can contribute. Use these as part of our whole script writing process. Go ahead.
And the other technique that you'll learn over time, and this takes practice too, and the best person to practice with is your spouse.
That's a good point. Yeah,
it is, because let's say I'm talking to my wife and I'll say, how do you feel about us buying a new car? Well, I think it's a horrible idea. And I go, well, what makes you feel that way? Why do you, what specifically is it that, and you might be thinking, oh, she's the one who wants to spend the money. And she'll go, oh, it's because I want to do this. I want to do something else right now. I don't want to buy. And you go, oh, well, tell me more about that. Why is that important to you? You see what I'm saying? You're letting, and this is the nice thing for those of us who are going to be in the initiator's position, is we don't have to worry about what their answer is. All we have to think about is what they're saying and kind of just guide them with other questions, if that makes sense to you. Because you'll eventually get to where you're going if you're asked the right questions that require them to elaborate on their feelings, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. I also like to get them to become the third party. So you say to them, who else really needs to see this email that I sent to you? And
That's great.
And in truth, they're going to start giving you answers about themselves.
Okay, so that's a closed-ended question. How would you ask that question open-ended?
What do you mean? The open-ended was,
when you say who else
really
do I need to? Who else
email?
would you? Okay, who gives you a one-answer question?
Can you think of anybody else
Can
who might benefit?
How about another way to ask that same question would be, tell me about how your organization is set up and who within the organization would benefit from this type of presentation. Tell me more. Tell me more. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Don't make it so narrow. Keep it wide as you possibly. You want to cast the biggest net we can initially, and eventually we'll pull them in, if that makes sense. Does that kind of make sense,
Yes.
everybody? Yeah.
Hey, Paul,
It's a good question, though, Martin. The way you're thinking is right. And again, I'm telling you guys, to start getting in the habit of open-ended questions, you'll find that in just general life, you'll start to ask more open-ended questions and you'll get a hell of a lot more information back. You'll learn. People will tell you things you will be shocked that they will tell you.
Paul, I forgot to mention in the very beginning, I should have introduced you a little bit better. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in sales? I should have asked you a little bit more about that, but he's been doing this for a while, so Paul knows what he's talking about. Just tell us a little bit about your history.
I do. I've sold building products and stuff. I've been in a sales role pretty much my entire life. My background's in political science, for what it's worth. I have a PhD from Abide University in psychology. For those of you, does anyone know what Abide University is?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, you got to watch The Big Lebowski, because that's what it is. It's a joke. But I always tell people I have my PhD in philosophy, in simplicity theory. So I try to keep things pretty simple. And so it's about communicating. But the best salespeople that I've ever encountered with are the ones that shut up and let the customer do the talking. And essentially who we're talking to, we're trying to get a conversation going with, because they're going to buy our services, is essentially what we are offering them. We're offering them a collection of things that we can provide, whether it's access to the meme collection we have or the information we have to help them fight their battles, or it's education we can provide to them, whatever. But we've got to determine what they're really looking for before we go out and sell. Let
me say this. Michelle and I had this conversation just this weekend about we have some really exciting things I forgot to mention as well with the Doulas and Midwives database. And I know we briefly mentioned this, but we're going to create the thing that we're going to use as what are we going to offer the doulas and midwives? Well, number one, we're going to offer them some education that they don't have, that is going to influence them in the future, because as this happens, as this process unfolds in society, obviously it's going to end eventually. You can't continue this. It's not sustainable. It's completely ridiculous. So it's going to end. So anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a list of doulas that are intact friendly. Okay, so they can just say, hey, I'm intact friendly. Okay, that's all they have to do to get on that list. I'm going to ask them a few questions. Okay, they are intact friendly. They're on the list. Okay, so if somebody, one of the first things that we're going to ask them is, will they advocate? Okay, when Michelle talked about this, she had some difficulty with one of the people advocating. So will they advocate for the child on the child's behalf? That's all we're going to ask for. They have to have some basic knowledge to get on that list. But that list is also, the secondary thing to that list is we're going to have a certification. Okay, so we're going to have our own certification, and the certification is going to be set up so that doulas and midwives can go on our website. They can fill out our videos. They can answer some questions, and they get a certificate that they can say, put letters after their number, after their name, or say that we're intact. They can utilize this for marketing their services, and they can also utilize this. We can send them people because they have that knowledge. And we can say, look, we've got somebody that's been through our education. They know what they're talking about. This is the perfect doula for you. And then we just market that service as well. So this, we are going to create services for people that are beyond what a lot of us are just thinking. So just keeping that open-minded, keeping that in mind.
Daniel, when the midwife said she doesn't feel comfortable advocating about this, what would have been a great open-ended question to ask her?
What could you have done to influence? Go ahead, Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Can you
Yes.
hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So first of all, it was a parent who is a doula, and my response to her, when I kind of sensed that she did not feel comfortable refuting the doctors dismissing her request not to retract her son. And I said, you didn't feel confident enough to assert your position on your son's behalf. As a parent, if I were to hire you as a doula for a family, what could I do to support you in advocating for this family?
The open-ended part of that was, what can I do to help support you? You were right on it, Michelle. That's exactly the right question to ask.
Because that's what I felt like needed to happen. So I think if we can get a group of doulas that are confident enough, and then we as an organization kind of back them up as they're going in the front lines, more or less, to advocate, and we've given them the certification, we've empowered them. That was kind of how I thought about it, is what can I do to support them and get a response from them and be available to do that. That's kind of why I reached out to Daniel and said, is this where we're going with this? Can I take it here and be a resource for these people that are going in, and do a follow-up phone call then with the office after you went and visited with the family or whatever? But that's how I handled it. And like I say, that was my first interaction with the doula this week, and it gave me a lot of ideas. The conversation went really well, but it let me know that they clearly don't feel empowered enough to advocate on this level without some degree of formal support from our movement.
Right. And ideally, you would want to get her to have it be her idea that you provide that support and help to her. Because once she makes that decision that you're the right person, or we're the right organization to come to get the education and the information and the backup that she needs to be confident in what she's saying. You see what I'm saying? But yeah, that's where you're kind of you're kind of leading her along that thought process by asking her these kind of questions. So you're right on with it. So I'll go to the,
I felt like I was actually more comfortable having the conversation than I thought I would be. But I also know that she's familiar with, because she's part of my Your Whole Baby group.
Yeah.
So she's already familiar with our movement. She's already on board. But getting her to that next phase of employing it professionally was not even considered. And the fact that personally she didn't feel empowered enough was concerning.
Michelle, what might empower them is if we come up if we like compile position statements from like, you know, authority organizations that say do not retract your, you know, infant's foreskins, like from Europe, you know, so science has
that's
no
exactly-
borders.
Well, like I told Daniel, what I envision is if I see a post like this that's happening in the Your Whole Baby education group, you know, I'm trying to remember where it is, but it's kind of like our main group. And there'll be these just kind of random posts where people talk about when they went to the doctor's office that day, or someone was going to retract them and they've had to kind of go toe to, you know, interact with that professional in some sort of educational capacity. But I got the sense from her post, you know, that he just kind of dismissed her and she just let it go and went home and just came and vented her frustrations out to us. And that's why I reached out to her and I said, you're posting this, you're a doula. What can I do to help you feel empowered as a doula to advocate? Because what I would want to do is hire a doula in your area for you to go to your next appointment with our information in hand. So that's why I had reached out to Daniel. I said, okay, so as I'm making these interactions and I'm wanting to say, okay, right now I'm going to get a hold of Your Whole Baby. I'm going to send the info pack to your home now. Let's go ahead and get an appointment scheduled. I'm going to connect you with a doula in your area. They're going to either be virtually available or they can accompany you to the appointment. You'll present the information to the provider, and then we'll be available to answer questions from the provider at that point. That is kind of how I envision this kind of happening, and that if I needed to then make a follow-up phone call and say, hey, one of my advocates visited your office today with Mrs. So-and-so. We just wanted to follow up, make sure that the doctor received that information, make sure he didn't have any questions, and give our information. That is kind of how I'm envisioning this playing out based on just my first interaction this week and seeing that I'm about to open this can and I don't know how I'm going to refer these people. See, I'm a case manager by trade. So I'm like, once I identify a need, I have to figure out how to refer these people and have a system in place for doing it. And this is what
I
I'm
love the
thinking.
idea of you like having people in areas who would go to appointments. Like I would do that, you know, if there was somebody in this area who needed, you know, assistance going to an appointment. Yeah, I would go.
Yeah, exactly. And if doulas, if you're saying to me it's difficult for you to get clients, well, okay, I will get you a client. I will make contact with this family, put them in touch with you. You charge your single visit rate or whatever. So I feel like this is a business opportunity for this market, for this segment of the medical community, because they are dying for clients. And if
that's
I can,
how you're going to get into it. That's very smart. That's the way.
This is taking on a new life of its own. That's what I wanted to do with this whole NLI process, is stimulate the thoughts within every one of us to reach your potential, because Michelle's like, she's going to take over this and run with it. This is going to be a whole.
I don't really have that much potential, but I'm just like,
whatever.
This is something that's
everybody listening
this is
to you
something that really is needed.
Everybody listening to you is impressed, believe it.
Yeah.
I make this first interaction and I'm like, before I reach out to these other 500 doulas that I've already compiled, I got to have a plan in place, because I'm going to say I get 5 or 6 to start out with. I want to go right back to my Your Whole Baby group and put their names out there and say, hey, anybody have an upcoming appointment, need an advocate to attend with you, I got a doula for you right now.
Yeah, see, that's an
Let's
opportunity.
get her hired.
Yeah.
Yes.
This
That's
is a sales
how I see it.
opportunity.
That's how I'm going to, This is how, and that's why I said for them to buy in, I kind of have to sell them something. I have to say, here's an opportunity. I can connect you with some customers here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you can
to your
really,
customers, you can say, how would you feel about, or tell me how you'd feel about having a doula that was trained not to harm your child?
Yes.
Or would you like one that's going to harm them? You know, if you can pick, which one would you pick? I mean, kind of ridiculous suggestion, right? But it's kind of where you're going.
And that's why I like the idea of the certification, because again, as I'm looking at these different doula sites, I'm seeing how they list their credentials. And as a family that is searching, especially for some of us that are considering, that's going to be, you know, a benefit that this person is intact friendly, and I'm going to want to go with them. So I just see it as a win-win. I just want to make sure that I can somehow figure this out and pull it off, because like I say, I'm a case manager. I can write a treatment plan. I know how to get people connected, but I don't necessarily know how to develop a certification, and I'm not good at sales. So there you go.
You've sold me. I think what we can do is, this is where I think we can all help out, right, Daniel? I mean, if you can, I clearly see this has tremendous potential as well. And if we can get the nuts and bolts put together for you, what you can do is just build your own pyramid of support. I mean, that's basically what this is, right? You find other like-minded people that are passionate about it, and you learn to delegate, because that's what you have to do.
I'm working on that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely working on that, but I was kind of trying to get my plan together, and then, like I say, just kind of getting feedback from you guys and just honing in this ability to converse on that level. And, like you said, I only have a couple of minutes. I got to grab their attention. I want to build bridges, and me, because of how I interact sometimes, I definitely need that support from you guys to perfect those skills.
I actually
I
put together some questions that are kind of broken into different types of questions, and I tried to do them from your perspective, Michelle, because I was kind of thinking about it from the midwife and the doula thing initially. So my questions might be a little awkward because it's me, but what I would say is you should take these questions and hone them and really make them your own questions, is what I would do.
Okay,
So,
well, I would just say if you'd be willing to work with me on that just a little bit to practice on and that, I would be
That's what we're here for.
open to that.
So here's some questions. I broke them down into some different what you're looking to try to accomplish. So if you're looking for qualifying questions, is to see if they're interested in working with us. So I came up with this idea. Well, when do you think you might engage NLI for training? That might be a question you might ask somebody. Or what do you think about our emails so far? Or how should we move forward after today's meeting? These are other these are kind of getting them qualified into it. Which area about emails do you have? That's supposed to be which of our, so that's a typo. Which of our emails do you have any questions, still have any questions about? Let them talk to you about it, and then you can kind of see where they are. So I also came up with what I said was some need-based or pain is really, that's their struggle. When I'm talking about pain, we're helping them release their inner struggle that they're having. So that's what pain questions are. So there you go. Why isn't your current solution or process working for you? If someone has said to you, yeah, I read your emails and man, it makes me sick to my stomach. And you go, well, what about it made you sick to your stomach? Well, because I see this happening. And then you can say, well, what in your current situation, or why is your current situation? Tell me why your current situation is making you feel this way. And then you would say something like, well, tell me how you would change that. You see what I'm saying? Ask them to tell you if this makes sense to you. So what's preventing you from changing your situation or your position or the way you deal with it? It's like with a lady that, like you said, she didn't feel confident, but you say, well, what's preventing you? And she may say, well, I don't feel confident. Well, what would make you feel confident? Well, if I knew more about it. Well, what if I could help? Tell me about the type of education I could provide for you. What could I provide to you to help you? You see, you keep opening it, but you're actually narrowing it down to where she's going to say, I want your help. And as soon as she says that, you've got her. You see what I'm saying? And then you can change the conversation. But you might always go back to some open-ended questions at some point because you'll get way more information out of it.
I mean, at some level, if you look at this, we're doing them the best favor they could possibly have, right? I mean, we're protecting children. We're giving them knowledge and information they don't have access to that is hidden in our society. And this is going to be coming forth in our society. So it's unraveling as we speak. I think things are changing under the surface. And I see that the kind of resistance that we've been experiencing and seeing in society is going to start deteriorating, I think. Anyways.
The Intactivist tsunami is coming.
I think
so
we
too.
need to break down their, am I on? Oh, I think we need to break down their kind of shame, concerns about it, that they're going to look silly if they bring this up professionally, that, they're going to be like a conspiracy theorist. That's what a lot of them are concerned about. They don't want to seem out of the mainstream with something fringy. You know, we understand that we're doing
And in the world, we are mainstream, and
I
the other
know.
guys are fringy. That's the
Yeah.
crazy part
Like-
about it,
but
right?
not in our society. And that's the thing is we're the societal influence on psychology is ridiculous. It just blows my mind how influential society is. Whether you live in some place, you're going to be this type of person. It's literally that way. We're literally like brains that are born into this world, and then all these inputs are starting to be forced into our brain before we can even critically think about them.
Well, Daniel,
what I'm
what would it take? What would it take for a guy like you to go against society's norms and actually do something about it?
Genital mutilation.
He already
have-
does.
I'm going to pay my bills.
Yeah,
I agree,
that's why I
but
like
that's-
that question. What was the first thing you ever recalled hearing about it? Because that will help them like realize that they have been brainwashed this whole time, you know?
That's
That
a
they
really
haven't
good open-ended
critically
question
thought
too.
about it.
That's a really good open-ended question right there.
Yeah. What's the first thing you remember? That's a good one. And that's a memory thing. And then how did that make you feel?
Interesting.
Yep.
And then
Because,
that's
I
when you
mean,
get into
we're
the
good.
feeling.
We know how to program kids to fear something. You know what I mean? If I wanted my kids to grow up and be the typical American, how easy would that be? It'd be simple, you know?
Yeah.
But it's also simple to raise your kids to be so happy that they're intact and grateful, and they'll understand the sad thing that happened to the other people, you know?
Well, my parents tried to convince me what they did was good, and it didn't work. So I can tell you that right now. It caused a huge problem. But anyway, so there's some, yeah, these are all great points. So here's some, I'll show you some other questions that I kind of put together. Like what are the benefit, I tried to come up with some questions about benefit driven questions. Something like, how important would you say saving babies is to you?
That's
some
really
of these
good.
sound crazy to maybe, well, obviously I want to say babies. Well, how important is that to you? What link would you be, how, if you're not willing to stand up to the big society, what's limiting you from doing that? How much time have you spent dealing with botched procedures? I don't even know if that applies, Michelle, but do they ever have to deal with these babies when they've had to go in for revisions, or they're having, I hear about it all the time about something's wrong with my baby. Yeah.
I don't get that that's the case, but I think it is a real huge opportunity, again, for a profession that is chomping at the bit for clients. I don't understand. And again, especially when I looked at the full spectrum doula and all the bereavement and things that they have in place for those types of situations, I can't even imagine. Even just a medically fragile baby, a NICU baby, like that is a complete, I don't know why doulas are not tapping into that.
That's going to change. That's going to change.
Yeah.
You know what else too? What you were saying with these botched procedures and revisions, we should make people aware of what they consider botched and how every revision is actually just causing much more damage, because the revision procedures are the worst of all. They leave you with absolutely nothing. So,
they say 20% to 25% have neonatal stenosis, right?
Well, no,
as a result.
Yes, actually, 100% of circumcised males have some degree of narrowing, which is a really important point to bring up. And then, I've heard figures from 10, 15% require, a procedure to reopen it for meatal stenosis. And that shows you how the development has been altered. And, they have essentially, they have hypoperfusion. They have low blood flow. So it's like the bottom half of their penis has had a stroke.
Jimmy Kimmel went through this, and also Pat Brown. I don't know if you guys know the Intactivist Pat Brown. Pat Brown told me specifically about it. He went through hell. He said those procedures are extremely painful. You're trying to open up a closed urethra, and you're literally cutting again. It's just crazy.
Well, guys, I can tell you that happened to me when I was about 6 years old, and I will never forget it. And one of the big benefits of it now is I am so susceptible to getting bacterial infections because it's wide
It's
out.
open.
It's so
It's
huge.
open there.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what?
I can't sit in a hot tub as an
It's so
example.
common in the United
Damn.
States. It's known as a boy's second circumcision.
That's what I was going to say. Yep.
Yeah, and it has
Exactly.
great, it really helped me not get urinary tract infections, which I mean, it's
I
it's-
usually
number one
start off
reason
by
why we
saying
do
to people, 6%, the gold standard studies show that 6% of infant circumcisions have serious complications and another 12% have less serious complications. And that gets them thinking, oh my God, I must have seen complications and didn't realize it.
Exactly. That's a really good point there, Martin. Thank you.
yeah,
It's I mean, we could spot it immediately. What they wouldn't even consider a botch, they would say, beautiful job. And we think that's the most disgusting, worst botch you could have ever done to somebody, by the degree of cutting, so all they think about is straight lines and, the
Nice
cosmetic
scar.
appearance,
Yeah.
one tone, they have no idea about the anatomy and the neurology of what they've destroyed.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So
I
anyway,
like to relate it. I
Go
like to
ahead.
relate back to just surgical incisions in general, because so many times people in general complain about pain at incision sites anywhere on the body.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I try to always go to making that connection for people, that when we're talking about a scar that is in the most intimate place and how our body reacts to scars, surgical incisions on other parts of our body, there's just, I always try, especially healthcare professionals, I try to take them there.
There's a
Michelle's-
video of
Michelle's
a
a nurse.
pediatrician. Oh, you too, Michelle? There's
Yeah, I
a
just want to let you
video
guys
of
know
a-
Michelle's a nurse. Sorry. Go ahead, Justin.
I was gonna say, there's a video out there of a Jewish pediatric urologist who is saying how, every circumcision causes neuromas to form and all this other damage, and how he never would have done it to his son if it wasn't in order from God. So, it's a great clip. It's not very useful, for us, unless, you share it with somebody, but yeah, it just shows
But
you
you
the
know,
mindset.
there's a bris that doesn't involve cutting. And I know several Jews that are intact and
Yeah,
fully
Shalom.
Jewish. So, I mean, are you? So, I mean, it's not required. It is not a requirement, and nor is it a requirement for Muslims. And it's right out banned for Christians,
Right.
but it's done anyway. So
We can
it's
just-
done out of ignorance.
We're going
I'll
to
tell you.
destroy it. We're going to
Yeah.
destroy this bullshit.
So,
Okay, let's get back to the
anyway-
call. Sorry.
Back to the questions. So here's some other questions that I came up with. How do you think changing this area might improve your day-to-day work? There's some things you could do about reality of the situation or in the future. For example, so where do you see yourself in a couple of years from now? Do you see, this kind of gets to your point, Daniel, with the wave of this coming and people are starting to hear more and more about it, are you going to follow on the side of the good or the bad? That kind of thought process. You could ask a question like, where do you see yourself in 3 years from now when this is illegal and you've been advocating for it? I mean, where do you see yourself? You follow that kind of thought process? Asking those kind of questions like, well, how are you going to deal when it's suddenly illegal and people are going to say, well, why did you have my son? Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of ways you can deal with it. So again, these were just some questions I kind of came up with. So one thing that I thought might be good for us to spend a little bit of time on was talking about objections. And so this question was, the objection is I need to discuss this with my supervisor. So one way you could, if someone tries to divert and say, hey, that's not really, I can't make that call, blah, blah, blah. You could say, well, who else is involved in making these types of decisions? Because you've got to get to the right person. If this person you're talking to is not the one, now maybe Michelle, that might not work in your situation, but if you're in a doctor's office and you've got a hold of somebody and you're trying to talk to them and they go, I don't make that decision, you got to talk to so-and-so, the head of whatever, that's the person you need to get to. That's the way you ask a question.
Gather that information. Gather that information and put it in your database.
I don't have time to talk to you right now. Then your question could be, well, when can you allocate time for something like saving babies? You could come up, you know what I'm saying? I'm not interested in NLI right now. Well, when you're interested in learning how something like, when are you going to be interested in learning how to save babies? Let's get that, When. Don't mind asking those kind of closed-ended questions. If you get into just a no, ask a very direct question like, well, when or how or who makes these decisions, and then you can also say, you can ask them, well, what other concerns do you, if they've kind of put the brakes on one thing, you can say, well, tell me about another concern, or try to divert. One of the things is if you kind of run into a roadblock, ask another question and try to divert the conversation in a different way. And you'd be surprised that objection might go away completely by the time you get. Does that make sense?
That reminds me of having going through your fingers and having, anatomy, structure and function, psychology, history, just having a thought process of each stage you can drop to something else. You know what I mean? If they say, talk to them, if they say it's not important that the sensation, but say, hey, this harms the psychology. Like this little, it may affect your sensation, but it also affects your mind, your day-to-day life, like how you respond to stress, your happiness, your everything about your life that influences. So, you know what I'm saying?
Or my religion says I should do this. Tell me about that. Tell me about your religion. What is it?
Right.
And then you could say, well, are you, how would you feel about this? If you do, you could do, there's a lot of, we have to be prepared, but we need to be able to drive the bus to get them to where we want them to go, to give them the information we've got. Right. So that's kind of what this conversation is about.
Push them. They already have a moral compass about everything else. You just have to kind of nudge this in there, which is that's your plan, Daniel, to start integrating it with FGM. But yeah, just bring it back to be, what situation, would it take for you to actually speak out against this? Do you think that we're not correct in our information? Or, what is it primarily that, makes you not want to engage with us?
Right.
Do you agree
and
that
flattery,
the
too.
looks important, or, just try to get to the bottom of what their personal, bias is if they're not going along with you, because it
I
might
say
be
to people, you have an opportunity to become really knowledgeable about this. You can become the go-to person on this that people will look up to and respect. You really want to do this. How would you feel if people came to you for trusted answers on this? And
right.
most
would,
people respond positively to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good.
Because you think they already want people to come to them thinking of them in that way,
Michelle, you have a very handsome young man on your lap there, I see. So here's a good chart. This one was 6 techniques for handling objections. Again, I stole this right off of somebody else's website, so we don't get credit for it. But I thought it was pretty good. If you get into a situation like that, be appreciative if they have constructive criticism, which, Martin, you kind of brought that up. Be curious about why they think that way. That's probably the most important thing to try to figure out, is why they're thinking that way. Again, you might want to ask some more open-ended questions or redivert. You can also kind of, if they're leaning a certain way before you get into the call, you can preempt some objections just in the way you handle the initial talk to them or the first question. You might be able to get around. If you know the elephant in the room, you can address it straight up and then try to maneuver around it. Humor is always good. I use humor frequently in situations myself, even though my wife assures me I'm not funny. And but here's really important. If someone just comes out with a complete misconception, a misunderstanding, a misstatement, or a lie, you got to confront it. You can't back down from that. So those are kind of ways you handle objections, right? I'm sorry, but I disagree with you. Your information is completely incorrect. I have no problem saying that to people, and that usually will set them back, and then I can recalibrate and then ask them some more questions to get them to kind of open up to me about where they are. So, but and if they hang up on you, go to the next one. There's plenty of people to talk to. I mean, you don't have to. We don't live and die on one call ever. Okay. You can ask questions about their history or about history, like the question about what was your first impression of, tell me about, how, when you first heard about that. Those are really good rapport building, camaraderie building. You can kind of reminisce together. Oh yeah, I remember the first time I heard about it, blah, 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 whatever. And some more is questions you can ask about, well, is there anything else out of this appointment you'd like to get? Tell me, what's motivating you to talk to me today? What's your motivation to be here? Because people aren't going to talk to you unless they have a reason they want to talk to you about it. Let's see. So pain
if they get
questions.
comfortable with you, everybody is itching to tell a circumcision story. Americans are bursting with circumcision stories.
Yep.
The question is, elicit it from them and then make them feel like they're in charge of this.
Yep. So we talked earlier about pain, and pain is not your pain, it's their pain. It's the pain that their struggle that they're dealing with. So this talks about questions about pain. So when you pick up that they're struggling or they're having a conflict or there's something motivating them, you want to drill down on what that is, because you really need to understand it. So you can ask, give me an example of that, or how long have you felt this way, or what have you tried to do about it? Those are great questions, because then they're going to open up and say, hey, I did this, I did that, this happened to me, that was bad. Well, it was bad. How'd that make you feel? Oh, I felt horrible about it. Well, what could you have done differently? How could I help you do something different? You see what I'm saying? You start opening up these things like this, they'll tell you. Now, the one about how much do you think it cost you and all that kind of stuff, that's more sales driven. But if you get the idea, once they've given you that nugget, don't just accept it, drill down on it and find out, get as much information about, because that might be the one thing that's going to make them decide.
Can you tell, have you ever, like, there's motivating factors. Some people are motivated, and I've heard this from sales talkers. Some people are motivated by toward going away from pain or towards pleasure, right? So people are motivated by different things. So a lot of times I'll try to use both the moving towards pleasure and the moving away from pain in a sales conversation or activism conversation. So you're trying to give them, an opportunity to reach something, but you're also trying to get them to move away from something. So
how can you give someone some pleasure when you're asking them a question?
What are they? Oh, I could say, like what Martin was saying. You're going to become this knowledgeable person. You're going to become the go-to person. You're going to become the professional that has this information, and people are going to look up to you. So that would be moving towards something, or preventing. Yeah, flattery. Flattery is wonderful.
Well, and you could say something like, Daniel, tell me about the first time you heard about circumcision. And you give me an answer, and I'll go, that's a really great story. That's, I really identify with what you're saying. You see what I'm saying? You're kind of stroking them a little bit. You follow? And then you ask them another question, and then you just keep doing, and you would be surprised. It works really well. It's almost, when you learn these kind of techniques, it's almost unfair. But
it's about valuing them. I usually lead off with, I really want to hear about the first time you heard about circumcision, because that it inherently says what you are about to say is of value to me. So run with it.
Yeah. And it sets the stage. Then either you're going to have to tell them, well, everything you believe is wrong, or you were right, it was weird and stupid. So let's talk about that. So, but it gives you the direction, but eventually you're going to be the one driving the bus, and they're going to be following you along in the conversation. That's the whole thing. So,
hello, Daniel.
Hey, what's up, man? Who is that? Is that Greg?
Greg Scrow.
Hey, how's it going, brother? Good to have you.
I just thought I'd let y'all know I'm here. Go ahead, continue on.
Glad to have you, Greg. Greg is he's an Intactivist from Missouri and a good friend of mine. So I'm glad to have him on the phone.
I'm glad you have friends.
Very few. Very few.
So I also some mistakes that you can make with this process is that you become like a lawyer and you're like drilling them with questions. That's never good. You don't want to give that impression. you're too worried about what your next question is to even be listening to what they're saying, when listening to what they're saying is the most important thing you should be doing, because that's going to tell you what the next question needs to be. Again, don't go rapid fire like an interrogation. That's never good. The why questions are really powerful, but you want to limit the number you ask, because it just, well, why do you feel that? Well, why? That sounds like a toddler, right? So you want to be careful about that. And the number 5th biggest mistake you make is that you jump ahead and just blurt the answer out to them. Because then you're
Let
done.
them think it through.
There's an applicable saying. There's an applicable saying. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
100%.
That's really
100%.
good.
Yeah. So we build a rapport first. We get the trust. We get the camaraderie. We may have to correct them a little bit. That's part of being a good friend, is telling them the truth and getting them right, getting their mind right, and but when they make the decision that what you're talking about, they're all about, and that you can help them, that's when we've won. And that's when it starts, right? That's the beginning.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so there you go. The way I would end this is that you need to come up with your own set of questions. They need to be in your voice. They need to be the way you talk, not the way I talk. I'm from the South. People can't understand me half the time, So you need to talk the way you talk to the people you talk to, and make it personal. And I should have underlined this, you don't take it personally, because you can't win over everybody. And the reality of it is, even if you don't win that person over, you had that conversation with them, and I promise you they're going to think about it.
That's the great thing about Facebook, is that, even when you're arguing with somebody or trying to educate them, there's an audience that's actually watching and very interested in this. And that's who I always think I'm, actually arguing to or trying to educate.
And even if you screw up, like let's say you screw up majorly, at least you're still giving that, you're still planting a seed. Even if they hate you when they get off the phone with you, they've still thought about that. They know, hey, there's somebody out there that's against this. So it doesn't matter what you say, whether the phone conversation happens or doesn't. If the phone conversation doesn't happen, nothing's going to happen, right? If the phone conversation happens, something happened, and that's better than nothing, in my opinion. So if you're worried about being a perfectionist or have the weight of the world on this, you have to accept the fact that that just you making that phone conversation, having the phone calls and doing that, doing 10 phone conversations in one day is going to start to have an effect, and you're going to get better every time you do it.
Yeah, I would say in general, a good hit ratio is 20%. If you win 20% people, if you make 10 phone calls and you get 2 yeses out of it, you probably beat the odds.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But if you just think about it, with the thousands of people we can talk to, if you can impact 20% of them,
talking in person is so much easier than when you're talking on Facebook too. You could judge people's inflections, and so we have a much better success rate in person or over the phone.
I agree too. I think that's why I've given up on online Intactivism.
Yeah.
Well, it's got its place, but
yeah, and it's hard to understand on tweets or text or emails even really what your intent is or what you mean. People can read things into it, read it not the way you meant it. None of us, I think, are William Shakespeare on here. So, and even he's up for interpretation, right? But when you're having a conversation with somebody, you can clarify. And if there's a misunderstanding, you can clarify and get it addressed right there. And ideally, if we ever get beyond COVID and you can look somebody in the face and have a conversation with them, that's absolutely the best, because that interaction, you really do bond with somebody a lot better than even this kind of stuff right here.
I'm surprised there hasn't been a COVID study out yet, circumcision reduces COVID infections by 5% or some shit like that.
Next year.
You'll see
That's
it.
hilarious. It will, right? Okay, are you done with your presentation? That was amazing presentation, by the way. I'm very impressed with all of you that are that have been helping me with this. Like, I did not expect to have such great, high quality help from you guys, and I can't do this by myself. Like, I knew that this is something that needs to be shared. We need more people doing this, whether it's there in an NLI or in another group doing the same thing. We need more people doing this.
Yeah,
And,
like Wes's your sales technique, that's really brilliant, and that's a great way to do it. You know,
I mean,
it needs to be taught. It needs to be taught to people. You know, I didn't know a lot of what you're.
Put the pressure on them. This type of stuff that is to take it off of you, so you can absorb and listen and guide. We want to be in a consultative position, not a hard sell. Does that make sense? We don't need that. We're going to win over time,
regardless.
Right.
And you don't want to have stress in your life. Like, I've gone out and I've ranted and raved, and you know, it's stressful to you. You know, it doesn't do you any. I mean, at a certain stage, like I believe that just the squeaky wheel does get the grease a little bit. So just the process of that, you know, that some people need to know that there's people pissed off about this. That there's somebody needs to yell. Somebody needs to be upset. Somebody needs to be pissed off. Somebody needs to hear that people are mad about this, but also, like, it might not be best for this type of scenario when we're making these phone calls, right? Or doing these types of outreach. So we need to be not worried about our own internal feelings, but really trying to communicate and reach out. This is an outreach program, an educational outreach program. It's not about our personal selves, but what I'm trying to say is, don't shy away from being at least forceful to a certain level. You know, like, this is a horrible violation of a child, you know, so stand up, you know, be solid in yourself, have the knowledge, have the information, be willing to step on it, you know, like, be willing to be a little bit forceful if you have to, but also don't start off that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to build bridges. Okay, so educational video series. Let's open that up and we'll talk about that. That's the next thing I want to talk about. So,
am I on?
yes, you are on, Greg.
I got the party late. What is the end goal or the purpose of these personal phone calls? What are you? What's the end goal? Are you soliciting?
We're doing an educational outreach program to high value targets. So some of the high value targets we've got going on are media and reporters, editors, publishers is one of the databases we're developing. The next one is a database for doulas and midwives. That's where we're at right now. Eventually, I'd like to have a database for lawyers, judges, child psychologists, neurologists, you know, whoever. But right now we're focusing on doulas and midwives, and also the any reporters, editors, and that type of thing. We want to have.
I just wondered if you were soliciting for dollars or support yet, or in this, or.
Eventually, with NLI, we're trying to do completely non donation. What I do is everything that my donations are NLI's website and all that stuff. So that's where I'm putting my money into, is the website and that type of thing, and the Zoom and all that. So I pay for that, just as that's my contribution to Intactivism, is paying for that. So I don't need people to pay me for that. So, but what we will need in the future, we will need to, and if you go to my donations page, NLI, the donations page, the Next Level Intactivism, you look at the donations, we highly support donations. In fact, in the future Intactivist list of things for Intactivists to do, one of the things to do is for all Intactivists to create a small monthly repeating donation. So they don't have to think about it. It goes right out of their bank, and it's $5, $10, you know, something that's not going to put them in any stress, but that is a continuous thing. And you do that over time, you get a lot of people doing that. So that's one of the things that with the donations. But with NLI, we don't want to compete with other organizations for donations, right? And a lot of these other organizations that are set up as nonprofits, if I come as another nonprofit and I'm also getting donations, I'm taking donations away from them. I'm kind of in this adversary role, and I don't want to have an adversary role with any of the other groups that are Intactivists. What I want to do is I want to unite and combine with them and work with them and promote them, get them donations, build the rather than take away donations from another organization, what I want to do is I want to build the donations for all organizations so that everybody, that more people are donating. That's my goal. So rather than take away from other organizations, my goal is to add to other organizations. And secondary, we will take donations. When we do this, what we're going to look for is we're going to look for specific donors for specific issues. Okay, for instance, I am going to be looking for somebody that can donate to a fax company so that we can hire a fax company to send faxes in these campaigns to all of the numerous fax numbers that we've been collecting during the database development. So we have huge numbers of fax numbers of media organizations, and just imagine just one day sending off 5,000 data pictures of the Sorrells fine touch sensitivity testing mapping. You know what I mean? Like sending a picture of a child having this done to them. Sending information. So there's so many different things that we can do. So that's the only way I'm going to need donations in the future. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So if anybody wants to create a donation for specifically NLI, contact me personally and help me with the facts. We're going to have to figure that out. But other than that, we don't take donations, and we want to encourage all Intactivists, especially members of NLI, to donate to other organizations. Okay, unless of course you want to help with one of these, individual funding campaigns that I'm talking about, because I don't want to have to deal with nonprofit. I don't want to have to deal with taxes. I don't want to have to deal with any type of financial thing that has to do with government or nothing like that. I don't want to have nothing to worry about that. Anyways, so let's go over, these are the campaign for the, I really wanted to solidify the campaign for the anatomy, structure, and function. In the process of writing the FGM campaigns, I've kind of started to realize that before we start the Tele-Intactivism, they need to have some basic knowledge of the anatomy, structure, and function of the male side. Okay, so that way they can understand that this is dramatic and damaging. Okay, that's a very fundamental part of, I think, the education process, that they have to understand that. So what I was thinking is, okay, if we run a Tele-Intactivism campaign right after the last FGM email, I don't think we're going to get as many. I would say we should go two emails into the anatomy, structure, and function campaign, and then we do our first Tele-Intactivism, hardcore Tele-Intactivism phone calls, where we stop doing everything else. We just make phone calls, and we all of us do this together. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, nobody is forced to do it. I mean, but anybody that does help, this is a big part of what we're doing. So anyways, what I'm thinking is this: we do the full 6 series of FGM, and we've developed that really, really well to this point. Okay, so we developed the full series of FGM. Once we're done with that, we get 2 emails in, the history, the histology reports of Taylor, Cold, and Lockwood, and then the fine touch sensitivity testing of Dr. Sorrells, and then Jennifer Bosio. What do you guys think on that? Any thoughts on that?
That's great.
Okay, so people agree with that. That's a good idea. I just think that they have to have this basic knowledge. When they have this basic knowledge, we're going to call them. We're going to be like, have you read these emails? Have you got this information? And how did you feel about this? What did it make? Did it change your perspective? All these types of open-ended questions that we're working on. But I just think that if we have those 2 of the anatomy, structure, and function done, and then we do the Tele-Intactivism. So I'm going to put
that invests people in it. You know what I mean? If you have to tell them like this causes great harm in the sexual arena, and that's one of the worst things about it. And this is the proof. Exactly. Also the childhood pain. I think for me at least, that's like a secondary thing. It's much easier to get parents right away to be concerned about that, but the long-term effects are something that I think is the primary concern.
Well, I know Ron Goldman, he had a video on, he's a psychologist, and he talked about this, and he said that parents, and I think there's 2 sides to this, because when I heard about this, what changed me, what really got me was the fact that it was the 20% or 20,000 nerve endings lost, right? And I know that's not like a solid scientific number, but it's, I use 75%. I use the term 75%. I think it's a pretty extensive term, but that's for the men. For the women, it's the pain, right? Because when the women think about it, it's more of the pain involved in their child being in pain. Okay, the men, we're like, okay, I've been through pain, I'm cool with that. right? And then we think I'm a tough guy, I can handle that. So we don't think about the pain, but it's different for the different person. That's where you have to pay attention to the person that you're talking to, like pay attention to your audience and you know, have the, you know, I use my fingers because I won't ever run out of, I won't forget my fingers, right? So my first one is anatomy, structure, and function. My second one is psychology and the harms of and how it affects the mental state of the person, the pain and the psychology kind of mixed together. And number 3 is medical excuses. Number 4 is history. So I just go down the list, and whenever I'm going through the list, if I run out of things to say, I'll jump between the 2 things, or any of those, right? So I can jump into any one of those. You should never run out of things to say, even if you're, you know, having this conversation with people and you get to that stage where you have that quietness. Pop into something else, say something else, just contribute. You want to contribute information as well.
I would also add always kind of like, you know, explain how they've been indoctrinated and kind of brainwashed in a way, and how you can help them see that very simply. You know, there's some very simple techniques to show them, you know. That's why I like you know, what was the first thing you heard about it? Because it's always a negative. It's always this type of teaching that goes on. And like I said earlier in a different day, it's they've activated the disgust mechanism in everybody's brains in America when they think about that specific part of the body. And
yeah, I totally agree.
Thoughts of danger and gross, and you know, so everything that's the opposite of like what you would think of with sex, you know, attractive, arousal. It's they make it the exact opposite. So, you know.
Okay, do you guys see this? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You guys see this right here? Let's really solidify this. First, what do you, anybody's thoughts on what the first email? Would you guys do the histology reports of Taylor, Cold, and Lockwood? Do you guys think those are too complex? Should I start with Dr. Sorrells? Would you start with Sorrells and then go to Taylor? Okay, let's do that. I think that organization of this is important. How we organize these is important. So
I would also use you could use things like Cosmo too, like, you know, common culture kind of stuff, where they say like how important this area is, and that they're all foreskin areas.
That's an interesting thought, is common culture. Okay, so let me put this in here somewhere. It's not going to be in the anatomy, structure, and function, but it should be in the. We may need an email on that, on just the social implications. I'm going to put a new thing here.
Am I still muted?
No, you're good.
Well, I'm trying to pick my spot here. I have a couple of thoughts.
Oh, well, jump in there anytime, man. We are. There's no like there's like no hierarchy here. We're all equal.
You know, I've thought about this a lot, studied a long time too. I have came to the conclusion that this modern day circumcision that started about 1870 in this country is no different. It's just a continuation of the same thing that's been going on for thousands of years around the world. Tribes have been doing all sorts of crazy, painful stuff to their children: breast ironing, foot binding, different modifications to female genital mutilation, splitting the penis lengthwise, all kinds of facial and body modifications, mutilations. I'm pretty sure that this is a continuation of that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to keep in mind what we are really battling. And I think that becomes evident when you encounter people that absorb all the information and still have the compulsion to do it. I mean, you've probably encountered those people. Yeah, your kid's going to grow up and hate you. You know, you're destroying his sex life, and they still have the compulsion to do it. When it defies logic, realize
that's the social influence.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure. That's when someone, that's a really weak-minded person, first off, that's got the information and still does it. We can't, that's beyond our capabilities. Like, you can give the information. That's as far, we can just get that far. Like the information, once it gets out there, the truth of this gets out there, it's going to start to change in our society. And we're going to start to see these changes in our social interactions. And I think that I'm already noticing this. Like
we need a new First
on some
Amendment.
level.
This country needs a new First Amendment, and that is that all children have the right to reach the age of 18 without any type of body modifications, specifically genital modifications. And that goes for, even slight birth defects or anything like that.
I would be
Anything
willing
that's
to say we need a
cosmetic.
constitutional amendment, like you're saying, to do this. I would agree
Agreed,
with
yes.
that.
Yep.
That we
to
should
protect
literally have a
children.
constitutional amendment to protect children from this.
Because we should understand, how, like you said, this has been going on throughout history. This is
Way too
nothing
long.
new. And we're
Thousands
not,
of
as humans,
years.
we're not good at it. Yeah, we're not good at handling this kind of stuff as humans. So we do need a law.
Okay, back to this anatomy, structure, and function thing, because I really want to solidify this before we end this call tonight. I want to have the anatomy, structure, and function done tonight. We might not get some of the other things into some of the other things. It's already an hour and a half. But so we're good with the fine touch sensitivity testing going first. Dr. Bazio's study and a little bit about Jennifer Bazio's study. That'll be the first email. You guys good with that? Anybody want to add anything to that? Thoughts? You see what I have on the screen there. So if you want to add something to it, let me know. Okay.
I always add something just like, something that they already know is true. Like something like, current circumcisions, amputate part or all of the frenulum. And then they'll be like, oh, what's the frenulum? Oh, that spot. I know what that spot is. And then you could show them like, share imagery of how it's always done. And, and sometimes it's, much more severe than in other types. So you can kind of show them how, they've seen different, severities in their own lives and how it's not
Absolutely.
okay.
That's a really good point. Okay, so then after the spine touch sensitivity testing, you guys think the histology reports Taylor, Cold, and Lockwood, and then after that we do the
So those are going in
Tele-Intactivism.
separate.
These are all
Daniel, those are
separate.
going in separate
Yeah.
emails. Okay.
Just like the FGM campaign, we don't want to have too much
And you're
information
trying to
going on
keep
at
them.
once.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
one page.
I mean,
bullet point.
this one we did right here. If you guys can see this, and I know Greg, you can't see this, but I'll show you the information, Greg, later. We just did a new post on our blog. This is so you guys can see this. I know Greg can't, but if you look at this is about the right size. Okay, it's about 3 paragraphs and it's done. This was a perfect size. The first two a little bit more. The next one is going to be a little bit more. I just don't know how I'm going to cut that social one because it's so much information. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But
There's Daniel, there's an excellent meme that I think it was Michael from Missouri. Is that your name?
Greg.
Greg. There's a great meme that shows all of those different modifications on children, and it's all in one image. So you could see how like this is something that's been going on socially in our culture. This is our little thing here. And get them just kind of thinking about that. That's where memes come in handy sometimes, because I agree. You don't want these to be too long. Otherwise people will just kind of like, go brain dead over it.
And that's the meme library database right here. If you guys can see this, I'm going to pull up that one that he's talking about.
Yeah, that's awesome that you have this.
Yeah, this took me literally a year to make.
Yeah, this is a major contribution to Intactivism, having everything like right here.
We're gonna be adding more to these. I have some more images, and I'm gonna be adding more to these. But this is like, go through this, and if you guys, especially any people that are helping with this, like, go through and look through this, and then see if there's any categories you want me to add, or if there's any missing mimes that you think are very powerful. So, feel free to give me any recommendations on this. Let's see, where is that? Is it not coming up here? Oh, let's see. Now I just learned something. Okay, this is not set up. Okay, well, I have to go fix this. I thought I had that done. So I was looking at the mime and I was like, okay, the cultural, I have those. I have a lot of those, but I don't have it on my page. Well, that's information I needed to know. Okay, well, I'll go back and fix that. But I know what you're talking about. They've got a picture of kids like having, their other
face scarred
horrible
up
things, the facial scarring and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But okay. So after the history of histology reports, I was thinking the mechanical function would go next. Okay, you got the 2 of the sensitivity. In my opinion, this is how it would go as far as I learn more about this, my feelings have changed. I think the mechanical function is the number 1 most important aspect of the foreskin during sex. The number 2 is sensitivity. Most people have the first thing you would think is sensitivity, but the mechanical function, that it actually changes how it feels, right? It changes the actual penetration and everything. To me, that's, but because the sensation is so important, as most people, we're going to go with that first.
You know what it is, Daniel? I would put sensation first, just because a lot of people think
that's because most people
the function
think that.
is better
Yeah.
in the circumcised. They say, oh, but he can go so much faster and longer, and it's so much better that way. And you're like, no, it's actually not. And then they have to learn that. That takes a while. So they actually, I think going about the mechanical function, might, I don't know, they might, kind of.
Well, the mechanical is going to be
I think
this is going to be the 3rd email. So we've already sent out the fine touch. We've sent out the histology report. Now we're going into the 3rd email, and the mechanical function of that is.
Or you could even throw in sensation along with, with the mechanical function. You could say during retraction, it puts pressure on the frenulum, which causes great deal of pleasure, and you could even add sprinkle it in there.
We definitely will. And
but circumcision converts your penis into a multi-tool. You can use it for a hammer, pry bar, tire buddy, your trucker, whatever.
That's great.
That was awesome. Okay, so mechanical function, reducing friction of intermission, protection, and then the gasket to prevent drying out. Okay, and so how this affects the female. Mechanical function. And the next one, now my question is, should we have the female effects, or should we have male orgasm next, or something else? Any thoughts?
I put male orgasm. I'd keep it kind of like along the sexual lines first of what's, people would be like, this is the most horrible thing I could imagine. I don't want this to happen to my child. Yeah.
Well, when we've done the fine touch sensitivity, so we've done the fine touch sensitivity test, we've done the histology, then we've done the mechanical function. People are gonna have a very strong understanding, so that when you get into the orgasm, I think you're gonna be able to. If I started with men having better orgasm, nobody would understand it. You know what I mean? So
it leads right into it. Yeah. Yep.
So that would be go next, and then how this affects the female during sex would be the next thing. Okay, so I'm pretty solid on this. What we've got right here to that stage. Anything else that we need to add or change or adjust? Because if this is good with you guys, then I'm going to go with it. Men having much better orgasms, how it affects the female. The next ones was how the American doctors are uneducated, complications. Okay.
Yep. I think it's good.
Complications, and then that's it, really, right?
Hey, Danny.
How do Americans look? Yeah, that one.
That's pretty solid. Yeah. What do you guys think? Any different thoughts? Anything you want to add?
Yeah. Hey, Dan.
Go ahead. What's up, Scott?
Yeah. All right. This is going to go back to the part where you were, you called it the sales pitch part, or how to talk to people part. Okay, so that's what we're on here. I watched YouTube, and I watched videos called Charisma on Command. And
what is it?
Charisma on Command.
Oh, I know that guy. Yeah, I know who he is.
So I took notes on
Scott.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I took notes on one of his videos. Well, a couple of them, but this one was about how to be persuasive and influential. He actually he used a character from Game of Thrones to the one that Natalie Dormer played to get the point across, to use her as an example. But I just wanted to read off the notes that I made here, because I think this might work here. So it says that what you do is you would get people to talk about what they care about. When you do that, then like Greg said, they don't want to know how much, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you care about if you listen to what they care about, then you care. That gets them to want to hear what you have to say, because you wanted to hear what they had to say. You ask about what they like. Ask them. They will tell you. Now, with men and women, it's different. Men connect through problem solving. Women connect through their emotional experiences. show people that you care. You know, you have to make it obvious, or you know, do what you can to express that you care, or you have empathy, or you have enthusiasm or support for what they talk about that's really important to them.
Those are some really good points, Scott. Really good points.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
heard the
it's-
last end of that, but that was really good.
Yeah.
What, am I fading out? What's wrong? You only heard
No,
the
I'm
end.
just saying I had to go take some care of something, but I came back and I was listening to the
Oh,
last end of
okay,
that, and I was like, wow, that's I'll have to listen to that when I'm recording. But
Active listening. You share first if necessary. Depends on how eager they are to talk. Then you share your feelings and information experiences. So with men, you're talking about a subject. It's more about how you dealt with the situation and how your actions got to a good conclusion, problem solving. With women, it's more about how it made you feel good to do it. You know, we solved it, or we saved the baby by convincing parents otherwise, and we felt so good because we knew that we saved the son from a horrible, painful experience. You get what I'm saying here?
exactly.
So-
No, these are
So with guys, emphasize the accomplishment. With women, emphasize the feeling of accomplishment.
Their
Interesting.
carrot.
Emotion.
Yeah.
The emotion. Okay.
yeah, that was great. Thank you,
So it's
Scott.
pretty similar, like two sides of the same coin. We'll go with that. Imagine how you would feel in their position if you had the same beliefs. Now, it's kind of like you might have to go to the dark side, we'll say, because some of us came from the belief in believing in this, that, you know, oh no, it's not mutilation, it's treatment, it's good, it's healthy, you know, all that propaganda. And Daniel, I remember you saying that when you gave people physical therapy, say they had that forward head syndrome, you kind of fix their neck, but over time their head would start to just gradually move back forward. And that, you know, and other things, people would just kind of go back into their same bad habits. And right, and this is one of those things where you kind of would relate to them, and you kind of go back into that territory to guide them out of it. It's kind of like people who escape from North Korea, but then they go back in to show other people how to escape, either into China or South Korea, right? That kind of a thing. Does
Interesting.
that make sense to you?
Yeah. A good analogy.
Yeah. There's people do that. Oh yeah, they're very brave people too. To go back and forth over there, you know, like wow. So that's what we call active listening. So where you really would relate to them, you would kind of, I wouldn't say revert, but think back to it. You're not actually reverting, but you're thinking back to when you were like that, or maybe you're pretending to be if you never were. And you're like, yeah, I used to think that too, but then I learned, you know, this was the turning point for me when I saw the video, or I met some protesters, or I just read it, or I saw it happen myself, or, you know, some experience. And with women, the more emotional you make it, the more it's really gonna
I have a
get their
question.
attention. Yeah.
Well, I have the idea that most young boys discover their circumcision, and it's probably a negative experience. How do they get from a negative experience, probably in childhood or somewhere in adolescence, how do they get from that to being that somehow it turns into a positive thing? I'm curious about
I think the
because
only way, yeah, I think the only way that they start looking at it as positive is, one, the propaganda. You know, that, I mean, you've heard the propaganda of, oh, it's healthier, that shit. The conformity is another factor.
Yeah,
So I
girls
think it's-
like it better.
Yeah, the propaganda and the conformity.
It makes it bigger.
I don't remember ever hearing any of that. Just none of that.
Well, you may not have heard it, but yeah, but it's out there. I mean, yeah,
Oh yeah.
It's common, yeah.
it's out
I
there. I
mean,
mean, lucky for you.
That's what I
no
was thinking,
man
like,
wants
how
to
do you get-
admit. No man wants to admit I'm missing half the surface area of my penis.
Well,
Nobody
I mean,
wants to admit
no,
I'm
actually,
missing.
Right.
well, luckily there are. That's us, because
How do you get past the frat boy type of, you know, mentality? Right.
because
Well,
we're
yeah, we're
willing
very
to
far
admit
and
to
few
it.
between.
we
Yeah,
can face
very-
the truth, and that's what you have to do to confront a problem, is that, you know, admit it's a problem and be willing to step up to it and say, this is fucked up, I'm not gonna tolerate it, instead of acting like everything's okay when you know it's not.
Exactly. And you know what I think you have to do is I think you have to actually make men think about what bravery is. I try to, you know, I mean, use this analogy a lot that you can get guys to like take a gun and storm a beach, but like it's impossible to get guys to, you know, speak out publicly about this because of the shame. The shame is, you know,
So
more
we
harder
have to
to get
attack.
over than
You got to attack the shame. Like, where's the source of the shame?
right.
Where I don't know. That's what I'm asking you here.
I mean,
Where's
on
the
some
source?
level, when I start talking to these men that are happily circumcised,
Yeah, they're not really.
I think that that's a very powerful time for that reverse social shaming.
Right? You mean men who say they are? They're not.
I just say
actually.
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion to be happy about that. Like it's a ridiculous notion.
It is. It's absurd.
And they're totally
totally
ignorant
absurd.
about it too.
Yeah,
And
I'm
they minimize. They'll use minimization. You
Either
can
they
see
don't
right away.
know better, or they do, but they're in denial. It's a one or the other, you know. And usually, people.
Some of them do know better, and that's where you get really pissed off, and that's where you can see there's some really evil, sick people out
What
there.
I've seen is when people take that step out of ignorance, some of them try to make that stop in denial instead of just moving into being informed and accepting reality.
That's a really good point.
And it's a problem, you know. I mean, because then they don't want to see the facts because the facts are going to prove to them what they don't want to believe. So they just do what they can to hang out in denial.
It's cognitive dissonance. That's it.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to.
I mean, in my opinion, it's a weakness, and I think it's cowardly. I mean, you can call me judgmental. I think it's cowardly. It's a weakness.
It is, and you have to call them on it and let them think about that.
Yeah. Oh, I was also about to say that the emotional thing, especially with women, the more you play it up, the more they want to. We'll say take your side because you make it sound good. With men, it's more of we're fighting a problem. We're fighting for a cause. That's what makes men
unity.
That's what makes men want to get on board with it more. Men more support. It's get the guys to be supportive. So the thing is, if you describe, that's the word, a person, we'll say that someone could be, like, you know, their reputation, their qualities, their capabilities, their attributes, and you say, well, you could live up to this if you do what we're doing, if you follow our instructions in a persuasive, that motivates people to do it because they see a goal to work towards. Does that make sense to you? They'll think I can be that, you know, like it's, I think, like a coach training their athlete, like, hey man, you can be the champion, you know, you can win the gold medal.
I think people have, like, you know, they're afraid of becoming that too, because then they'll have to deal with everything that we have to deal with. You know what I mean? So it's a hard sell to want to be an Intactivist. It really is.
Because you mean that your family's not gonna agree with you?
Well, I think there's a lot of I'm sorry. There's a lot of reasons, and I think part of it's social, part of it's ego. But I think those are the two major things: is social conditioning, and you know, like I was mentioned earlier, when you're a baby, you're like a computer with no software, right? And then people start downloading software into you when you're 3 years old, and I'm sorry, you're just not going to have that much control over that, right?
Well, that's why we're all products of our environment.
Yeah, religion's a perfect example of it. People can't get religion out of their minds even years after becoming atheists. You know.
Oh,
same thing.
Yeah.
It's a type of religion.
Casualties.
It's cultish, religious. Yeah.
You know, culture starts with cult. You know why? You get brainwashed, right?
Yeah.
And it's really true.
Yeah, but with people, when they make progress, you praise their actions to say you're on the right path. It keeps them going.
Agreed.
When you talk about what matters to them, they see that you're on their side. You need to be understanding and non-judgmental and guide them into listening. You make it about them. You use the words "you" to really get into their subconscious. Hey, this is your journey. You're accomplishing this. You're progressing. You know. So you show empathy. They'll trust you. That helps, and then you guide them through this.
Okay, I'm gonna I'm just gonna say one last thing about this anatomy, structure, and function. Then we're gonna be done with everything and close out the meeting. Well, we can continue talking about the psychology aspects. I think.
Well, okay. I was just
no, what you're saying is so important. I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to just finish this, just so we have the anatomy, structure, and function done. That's my main goal of just this part right now. So everybody's good with what I have on the screen right now. Fine touch sensitivity testing, histology reports of Dr. Taylor Colden Lockwood, mechanical function, men having much better orgasm, how it affects the female, complications, including meatal stenosis and death, loss of glands. Okay, so and then the last one is American Doctors Uneducated. I actually have a scientific study that I'm going to use for that. So everybody's on board with where we're at with that. Do you guys, anybody that's seeing the screen right now, is there anything?
The only thing I think of, like when I look at, you know, men having better orgasms, like that video of the man ejaculating, that's the kind of thing that convinces people right away. You know,
well, here's the problem with that.
I like those.
You're talking about ICANN FAP from Canada, the Canadian website.
Sure. Yep.
That's offline right now, and I don't know how to. I've been trying to get a hold of that guy.
I have a copy of that. I have a copy of that.
Oh, perfect, because we need that online ASAP.
Yep.
So we might have to put that on our website. But I was going to use, when I got to this men having much better orgasms, I was going to use that link. That was going to be one of the links I was going to put in that article. So
why did that get taken down? What was that about?
I don't know. I've been trying to get a hold of him, but I know it's down right now. It's not up. So and that was a very, very good website because it had a very important aspect of things for us. So anyways, that's down, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that being part of that would be very, very valuable. Men having better orgasms. Let's see. He basically did a frenulum rub and orgasmed on video. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but he actually shows it. He does a frenulum rub. He just touches his frenulum and comes from it. Right, the part I'm missing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Make this shit up. Okay,
and that's what makes it so profound. Is like people will be like, "Yo, I don't have this part." Or do you think he would ever allow this part to be cut off his body? That's the question you have to ask them. Right? And they'll immediately be like, of course he would never let that happen. You know? So that's that. And also there's the great multi-orgasmic rigid band video he has. And I have that too, where he orgasms 5 times in 2 minutes. Just from, you know, like an okay signal, you know, rigid band, you know, tip stimulation.
What's his name? His name Glen, right? Isn't his name Glen? His first name is Glen, I think. I can't remember his name. I met him at the 15th annual symposium.
Marotta or something like that.
No, that's Brandon Marotta. No, I think his name is Glen. I just can't remember his name. But he was the one that did the female. You guys are on. If you guys are on the screen, I'm going to pull this up real quick. But he's the one that he did the Oprah protest, and I have him on here. I'll show you his picture on the video.
He's the same guy who did the.
He did the
like
Oprah protest.
Wasn't he in the in American Circumcision where he was doing the lecture about, you know, this part of my body is what makes me able to do that?
Yes. Yeah. He was a big part of that. That's why let me pull up Oprah. Oh wait.
And that was, you know, that was, I thought, the most profound part of that movie. I would have gone much more into that.
Yeah, I think that we were missed. That's a big part that's not being taught. Let me pull up the Oprah Winfrey one. This is the guy who we're talking about. Whoever can see the screen. Let's see, hold on. This is the video right here. This is him.
Yep. I love my foreskin. That's the same shirt he was wearing too.
Yeah, Oprah Winfrey's. He protested.
He's had to wash that shirt
Glen Calender
5,000 times. Glen Calender, yeah.
Oh yeah. But yeah, he's a really cool guy. Glen is. But anyways, we want to get his website back up. I've been trying to contact him, but I haven't been able to get a hold of him. But if anybody knows Glen Calender, tell him we need his website up. And
Daniel, do you have the image of the frenulum crush during the procedure?
I don't. Not now. Which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the one with the picture of the frenulum before and after? I do have that.
No, it's actual like during the procedure when they're actually, you know, crushing it. Yeah, it's like, you know, oh my God.
No, I need that video though. That's her image. I'm sorry, but I need that.
I have all of it. Yeah, I got my own little.
See, Justin, we need to get together and just make sure that share this information back and forth between each other, so that we have let's go through the mimes together someday and just sit there and just go through them and just like, hey, what do we need? Go ahead.
I'll go through my stuff and try to compile everything, so I can send a copy of it.
Yeah, because I want to take what what you got, because I know you got a lot of stuff. So I'll definitely pick you. Anybody that has any contributions, like let me know. We're gonna, like, you have some thoughts on, or you want to have some mimes to add, you have some data to add to the, once we're doing the education library, we're really putting this thing together, which is going to be, like I said, after that, after the FGM one, what we're going to do is we're going to start creating the videos. That's going to be the Intactivist education videos. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create the video during when I talk about as we go over the what's it called here, the anatomy, function, structure, and function series. So the fine touch sensitivity testing and the histology reports of Taylor, Cold, and Lockwood. So those, when we do the video, I'm probably going to put those together. So what I'm thinking is I'll have those two written out before we do the video, and then we'll do the video online here while we're doing these meetings. What we'll do is I'll just put everybody on mute. We'll do the video. I'll end the thing, and then we'll just have a regular conversation like we are right now. Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah. Hey,
Go
I
ahead,
was going to
Scott.
just finish what I was saying.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes. So if this is if you have a lot of time with the person on this, is going to be a long conversation if you're doing all this, but you give them the image of something to live up to, like, the goal of somebody who's, you say like, as a stronger version of you, because you're improving yourself and facing the truth, but you have to do it in a way that let's say, does not insult the person that they currently are. Because if you're saying, well, this is a stronger version of you, it's like implying, well, you're weak right now. So we got to be careful with that. And you have to explain to them that they're going to get what they want by working with you, which is self-improvement. Now that was from the that was from the Charisma on Command. Another source on YouTube is Chris Voss. He is a retired FBI agent, hostage negotiator, and he now started like the Black Swan group. So I think if you put that Chris Voss or Black Swan on YouTube, you'll see him.
What's his name again?
Chris Voss with a V. Yeah. He actually teaches a masterclass. So they're like this masterclass website. A lot of different subjects you can learn on there. He teaches one on negotiation. He says anytime you're in a conversation and the words "I want" or "I need" come up, it's a negotiation. And the most dangerous negotiation is the one you don't know that you're in. But he says there's always a way to get what you want. Some long videos on YouTube that explain that, him explaining it. They're complicated. I mean, I'm sure, but he teaches that. I mean, he's saved people's lives with this. He's saved hostages.
They write books on it, you know what I mean? That's
understanding.
He does this.
Understanding, having just a little bit of sales education is so valuable and so powerful for us.
This is that concept, but this is something he did with life or death.
Mm-hmm. He's negotiating with like hostage situations and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's negotiated with terrorists to release hostages. He's used it for that.
So,
for real.
And I mean, I think that his videos would teach us quite a bit.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that information. Everybody has contributed a lot tonight. Like, it's a very valuable video. No, are you done? Not done. I'm sorry.
Some of the notes I took on
yeah,
this video?
Absolutely. We'll end the conversation after you're done. Go ahead.
Okay. You would summarize the situation from their position. That's to explain to them that you know what they're saying and what they're doing. Like one situation, there was a bank robbery. He had hostages, and then there was a truck that drove off. And all he said was like, "Oh yeah, he has that truck out here. What can you tell us about that?" And the guy just went into detail, open-ended questions. Like we talked about that tonight, right? Open-ended questions are opportunities. Keep the conversation going and give you more information. And the guy just went on, "Yeah, you scared away my driver," and he just kept talking about that for a while and told him more than Chris was expecting. But Chris was intending to get that information, but the guy just spilled his guts right there and didn't know it. He said something that people do to give up information is correcting you. So if you don't know something and you just guess at it, then if they don't like you being wrong, they'll tell you, no, that's not how it is. This is it. They'll tell you to correct you. So that's a way to get people to tell you things that maybe they didn't want to tell you before. You know, that they wouldn't tell you if you just directly asked, but if you just kind of go at it and you don't know, so you just, you know, take a guess and you're wrong, they're probably going to correct you, and then they will end up telling you. So if they're satisfied, they'll reply with "that's right," and they'll probably correct you on what's important to them. People want to be heard, so when you summarize what they've told you, then they feel like they were heard and understood. You need to make them feel respected. They want to trust their feelings, so you have to be empathetic, because when you show empathy, whether it's the real thing or not, you know, but whatever, when you show empathy in a convincing way, then their feelings tell them that you can be trusted. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they immediately will, because they could have their judgment saying don't. That happens, but it's a step forward.
You know, with women, what's a nice little thing to throw out there? Like, have you ever had, you know, somebody like your parents make you get your hair cut a lot shorter than you wanted to, and you were really upset about it, and then transition that into like, well, what do you think you're doing to a young man? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you know,
except in this case, it doesn't grow back.
it's that
right?
same feeling you could be giving to somebody else, except it's not about hair.
Right.
That can sometimes be a strong trigger for them.
And another thing that people really, really like to, what's the word to say, emphasize, that's really significant to people, is fairness. So you have to harp on being fair. You do that and you say, well, you know, it's not fair to him, but it would be fair, you leave him the choice. That's something that can really persuade people, because they think, okay, fair is important, I want to be fair. That's, you know, saying that's what you're working on right there. That's what can make them be like, okay, well, yeah, being fair is the right thing to do. I should want to be fair. So what you can do is, if you need to, you can question, well, do you really think you're being fair? You install doubt in their side. You get them to think maybe I'm not right, but you don't want to be arguing, because then they get kind of the anger position, and make it not an argument, make it more of, well, I can understand your perspective. You know, like the thing I said about like how you escape, but then you go back to show other people how you escaped. You know, to take them out with
Right.
People do
What
that
you have
most
to do is, then you have to say to them, and I know that you must have concerns about, you know, taking on this position because your boyfriend's probably in favor of it, you know,
Right.
so that must cause you stress. But, you know, we know exactly how to deal with that. There's really no issues, you know, because, you know, they always think it's, you know, is it, you know, like you said, is it fair? They'll start to think, is it fair to my boyfriend not to cut my child? Or is it fair to his brother not to cut, you know? And then you have to get them thinking in that way too, you know.
I mean,
but,
I
feel like
try.
we're here to support you, and we've already figured out every angle of this. So you know, you don't need to have
Am I
anxiety.
still on?
Yeah,
Yep.
I hear you. Yeah.
I want to butt in. I want to revisit something I mentioned earlier. The whole idea of, I think for most probably circumcised men, when they discover their circumcision, probably wasn't a positive thing.
No, that's a good thing,
But-
because that means they're seeing reality.
But
Yeah,
what
I
I'm trying
agree.
what I'm trying to build here is the bridge between that it wasn't a positive thing to somehow it morphed into something positive. And how did that happen? How and why did that happen in the
I think that
minds
occurs-
of American men?
That occurs because of our egos. Every human doesn't. I mean, that's the same thing.
Propaganda.
Same thing with female genital
Cultural
mutilation.
indoctrination.
They don't want to believe that they're injured or their parents harmed them in some ungodly manner, or that they're damaged or harmed. They don't want to acknowledge that. So this is just an innate part of humans. We don't want to admit that we are missing part of our sex organs. Like, we don't want to admit that part of our lives has been damaged.
I wonder how we could somehow revisit that connection between this was not particularly a positive experience to somehow, you know, take them back to that notion that their initial response to it was not positive. And, you know, I mean, I went through the same thing, you know. I decided that I must have been wrong, and I handled it by just putting it completely out of my mind, basically.
But we could say something like,
But-
could you imagine having this happen to you today? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's
There-
pretty
you know,
again,
there's some-
have something happening.
Some
Yeah,
connecting
go ahead.
them to the pain
There's
of
a
their
very-
past.
that you
Yeah.
could use thought shaping questions. So have like that one, you know, imagine it like when you ask the question, and require them to imagine something at the time.
Yeah,
how
it's
would it
worse
feel
even with
today?
that point about like in cultures where they do it later. You know, I remember I was at a meeting where somebody from an African country just brought it up, and everybody was kind of like, "Oh shit," you know. And he was talking about like how negative and damaging it is. So yeah, people also think, you know, oh well, you know, it'll be much more damaging if we wait to do it later, or if he needs to have it done later for other reasons. So no, I agree with you. Just be ready for that kind of reply.
It's
know?
it's also like asking why can be people defensive. So try not to ask why, but just listen. And when you give them feedback, if you get something wrong, they'll probably correct you. That's actually a way that Chris would say it's a very I guess common thing that would happen a lot. He would get information from people by telling him what he thought, you know, they were saying, and if he got something wrong, they told him.
Yeah, I think it's done at such an early age that a lot of people don't have any cognition of what happened and that it was a negative thing, you know. That's why they do it at such a young age. You know, I know in cultures where they do it older, then you will see like videos of like unhappy people, you know, saying, "Oh my God, what happened?" And you know, other people will be laughing at them. You know, there's videos out there like that, you know, in cultures, and it's disgusting. Of the unhappy young child, you know, after it's happened, and the adults are laughing around them.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
psychotic.
it's gonna be
psychopathic.
a shameful part of the history when the next generation looks back on it and goes, "Well, we're gonna put a stop to this," and then they look and they're like, our parents or grandparents, that's them there, ugh, you know.
Oh yeah,
That's gonna be.
can't
I
wait
have
till
a
that
little bit
happens.
of I have a little bit of personal experience that I've never heard of as long as I've been in this. Never heard of this. I, throughout my life, especially earlier, the last time it happened was 3 or 4 years ago, which is, I think, the only time it's happened since 2009, since I've been studying Intactivism. But especially earlier on, I would say it happened maybe once every week or two. But I would have this sensation basically from my circumcision scar that felt like, and the reason I have reference is I've always worked around mechanical stuff, and a lot of times you'll get your fingers mashed between stuff, or between a bolt and a washer, or between a hammer and something stationary, where you have a crushing sensation and you get your skin crushed, or use a slide hammer and get part of your body between the slide and the hammer. I've done that. But that sensation coming from my circumcision scar was like a crushing sensation. And it would be just absolutely sudden and be like a jolt of electricity through my body. And maybe 2 or 3 times like jolt, jolt, jolt in succession. And then that would be it. And then it'd be another week or 2 or a month or whatever. And you never knew. But I always kind of knew, you know, like, well, I guess, you know, that's some remnant, you know, of my circumcision. But I've never heard of that from anybody else. But I have experienced that. And I was kind of glad that it happened the last time. It's been years ago. But
I had an experience.
and only,
Go ahead.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I had a like a dream, and in my dream, I had like this shooting, searing pain right along my scar line, And when I woke up, it's like almost like it was real. It was so weird. It was like this.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, like it was like this regressed, like really infantile, like deep part of my mind. And it just like, I had this dream. I don't remember what was going on in the dream, but I remember some really bad things was happening. I was like, I was having some sort of nightmare. And then at the very end of it, like, I just remember waking up in pain, like feeling searing pain in my genitals. And I've never experienced that before in my life. And I think we have,
it's a surgical complication is what it is. You know, your scar, you form different types of nerve endings, like some things called neuromas that, you know, will feel pain as initially. And it's probably coming from the frenular remnant. If you have a shooting pain, it goes up your back. Because that connects to your, it's like a branch of your dorsal penile nerve. So that's what it is. And if you see, like, you know, if you go into groups where people are getting cut later on, you'll hear about that all the time. You know, it's the exact same like constellation of complaints they all have. And of course, you know, they're all dismissed. You know, the doctors dismiss all of it. So, of course, that's what that is, I think. You know,
of course.
Yeah.
No service after the sale, huh? Go ahead.
Basically, right?
Go ahead.
Basically, I just want to let everybody know that we're I'm going to just close it out, but we can continue talking or have conversations after the fact. But I'm done with the meeting for tonight. So anybody that wants to hop off or whatever, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate everybody participating. Like, this is like the 6th or 7th one we've done of this. And it's like every time we've had great people join us. We've had wonderful conversations. And I think we have created, rather than just sit here and talk about this, we're actually taking steps. We're actually doing something. You know, like a lot of people get stuck in the planning stage. They have great ideas, but there's no way to jump off those ideas, right? And that's what I wanted this to be about, is creating action behind the ideas. I had this idea of active Intactivists, that we're actively doing things. We're not just sitting on the sidelines. And what I mean by active is we're not just posting on Facebook or posting on social media, because that's easy, right? That's easy to sit there and share a post on Facebook. It's like 2 clicks, right? Like, that's easy. Activism is not just doing things on Facebook, right? Or on social media. It's a lot of it, right? That's a lot. There's a lot of value in social media. I mean, I was educated through social media about this. I've reached every one of you through social media about this. So social media is a wonderful tool. But what I'm saying is, as far as like the actual real Intactivism of actually getting out there and making a change in this world, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to spend our time doing. I want to spend our time doing high value activism. I want there to be a effective and efficiency, and I want there to be feedback loops in everything that we do. And what I mean by feedback loops is we're going to get validation of the results of our, we're going to have some sort of validation of our results. And the way that we're going to do that is as we start to develop these phone conversations, as we start to get into Tele-Intactivism, and we start recording these phone conversations, a lot of us are going to have very, very positive conversations. And those conversations we can share with each other. We can ask the people that we had those conversations with whether they mind us sharing those conversations on on YouTube or social media. And I think that process of getting that feedback is going to really like help us to align ourselves with what is successful and help us to guide us into being more successful. But I think that the whole process about creating an organization where volunteers can have active things, they can, whether or not you have 15 minutes a night, maybe you're a student, you don't have that much time, I still want you to have options that you can do high value, highly efficient, highly effective Intactivism without having to worry about creating an organization or doing all this and that. I want this to be that for you. I want this to be that central hub that, hey, if I don't have options to do, that I can go to NLI and I can find something that right then and there I can start putting my hands to work and I can start saving babies. This is about saving babies. That's the whole point of all of this. And, of course, getting validation for ourselves and maybe some changes in the laws. Validation is really all we can get. I mean, we're damaged. We're going to live our life damaged. We can restore. That's it. But maybe someday we'll have tissue regeneration. But to me, the drive that really drives me to do all this stuff is the fact that I'm going to save a child from having to deal with this, from having to have conversations and phone calls and meetups and Zoom meetings to protect other children. You know what I mean? I want the children of the future. We're that person that does that first, you know, that impetus to stop this whole thing, you know, so that the children of the future don't have to do this, so that they can focus on other things, you know, enjoy their lives and experience their full body and not have psychological damage. This will literally change our experience in our society. This will change our society, like this, because this is a first cause. I don't know if you ever heard of Thomas Aquinas. He's a philosopher. But if you look at everything around you, everything that you experience, everything had a cause, right? The color of clothes that you wear, somebody thought of that color, put it together, and then actually printed that color, right? So that caused the clothes to be the color that they are. So everything has a cause and effect. Well, Thomas Aquinas goes back and he says, you know, he gets into philosophy of religion, and he uses his philosophy to justify Christianity, which is kind of a loose connection. But he says that everything has a first cause. My point is, when you go back to your first cause, this was a major first cause in your life, and this changed who you are today. This influenced your personality, your ideas, the way you think, your responses to stress in your life, your emotional balance and stability. This has changed everything, and that influence in you is perpetuated many, many millions of times and multiple times throughout society. And the butterfly effect of this is that we live in a society today that is completely different than if this was never a part of our society. This is damaging our society. And that's why I think it's so important that we start to do this work and we motivate people, we get this information out there, and we start taking active roles in Intactivism. We start having volunteers that are doing this. And that's why I appreciate every one of you for joining this phone call tonight. Thank you so much. We will end this. And I think that the steps that we are doing are essential to changing the world that we live in today. And I don't think there's any more influential thing when we hear these things about there's more important things to do. I used to be a political activist. I used to be a health activist. I could talk to you about how the damages of nutrition in our society is affecting the mindset of people and all that kind of stuff. But when you really, really, really go back to it, if you start your life with genital mutilation, that's the first cause. That is the most important thing. This is the most important thing we could be doing as human beings, in my opinion, to change the future of the world. So when Mahatma Gandhi says, you be the change that you want to see in the world, that's us, so that we can create the change for the children. Anyways, thank you guys.
Daniel, I can't let you end it. I can't let you end it using a quote. So I'll use a Frederick Douglass quote, Intactivist, and that's agitate, agitate, agitate.
Yes, right. I appreciate that. Thank you guys. Love you guys.